Welcome to GothCast episode 4. This is Dr. Sanders.
And this is Robbie Gore.
Alright, today we're going to have a bit of a different episode that you probably heard before. So
Been doing primarily music review episodes.
yeah, but the Gothic subculture is a really big thing, so we thought we'd actually talk about some movies that are usually associated with
The
Gothic
Gothics.
culture.
Yeah.
And we're going to talk about some of the more obvious ones on today's episode. So they're going to be Blade Runner, The Crow, and Let the Right One In. Yeah. And we really enjoyed these movies, and they definitely have some of their negative aspects. We'll try and get into that as best we can.
But we'll also try and be as honest about how good these movies honestly are.
Yeah. Next episode will be a music episode, so expect that.
Yeah. But we will do another movie episode
in the future. So just because there's so much to talk about.
We'd like to keep a balance between things in the Gothic culture.
Yeah.
So we felt this was necessary.
Yeah. So let's just get right into it.
All right.
What do you think of Blade Runner, Robert?
I mean, Blade Runner is a staple of science fiction and noir and anything really kind of with that dark sci-fi feel to it.
Yeah, this movie basically created the cyberpunk genre,
Yeah.
at least in terms of looks.
It's like future noir kind of.
Yeah, they call it just cyberpunk. Yeah, which is like the kind of future, but it kind of sucks. It's like not a happy future.
Very dystopian.
Yeah, and that was something that I think was really refreshing about this movie at the time.
Yeah.
It's 1982. This is...
Lots of movies are very happy toned at this time.
Yeah, there was... This is a year before Star Wars had finished wrapping up.
Yep.
You know, Return of the Jedi came out a year later. And you have this really dark, bleak, somewhat trying to be realistic version of the future, you know?
Yeah.
Like, it's the future, we have all this technology, but that doesn't necessarily mean anything
It's gotten better.
is better, yeah. And just a side note for anybody who's listening to this, yes, there will be spoilers for these movies.
So just be forewarned.
Yeah, so if you want to not hear anything that's like super spoiler heavy about this, just try and skip past this section for...
We'll try and
put time
let
codes.
you know when
when we're gonna spoil it.
Comes up.
Okay. Yeah. Blade Runner, the story is that there's Rick Deckard.
Yep.
And he is a retired Blade Runner, which is a detective that basically stops these androids. And these androids in the future are used for basically slave labor.
Yeah, they're called replicants.
Yeah, replicants. And they only have a certain amount of time to live. It's only like 4 years. There's these 6 who are extremely powerful, get back to Earth from like the slave colony on Mars.
Yeah.
And they are trying to stop this giant corporation and basically, you know, head them off to try and figure out how to live longer.
Exactly.
Figure that out slowly through the movie, and there's a few different replicants that they have in there.
It's not apparent when the movie begins.
It's really not.
Yeah.
So he basically gets this briefing from the police chief, who he's like, you know, I'm retired, and he's like, does the whole police chief thing. He's like, oh yeah, you know, if you're not
one more time.
yeah, if you're not a cop, you're little people. You know, he's like, no choice, sort of thing.
I'm getting too old for this shit.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But I just really like this movie.
I know you do, Donnie.
Yeah.
I like it as well. I'm not as much of, I would say, a fanboy as you are, but I do really appreciate what this film did for cinema and really just how well it's made.
Yeah, I think that's one of the great things about this movie is they really tried to make their money go a long way with this one. And they have said multiple times that it was really, really hard to get this movie done with the budget that we had because it's a huge, huge world they're trying to build with it. And there was tons of miniatures and anything. Keep in mind, this is before CG or anything like that.
So everything looks very... I don't know. I like to call it more realistic because to me CG doesn't look real. Like even if you're shooting with miniatures, it looks more real to me than CGing in the scene. Like
you can just tell a lot of people who are on this movie were passionate about it and wanted to try their best for it. I know that Harrison Ford said he hated working on this movie because it was always raining and cold and there was long shoots and everything like that.
Yeah.
And he had to do like 16 takes of certain scenes. You know, he seems kind of down in the film. He seems kind of mopey. But
I think it works to the film's advantage, though.
Yeah, I think so. I just love the characters in this.
Oh, definitely.
They are kind of tropey in And by trope, I mean, like a very overused characteristics of a character.
They are, on some level, a stereotype or a type of character that we've seen time and time again throughout film.
Yeah, you kind of have the mad scientist inventor who went too far, with Tyrell, the guy who creates the replicants.
You have the retired cop / vigilante type.
Yeah, you have even the Captain Bryant. He's like the kind of bigger, kind of lazy police chief guy who's like, you're gonna go get him, and
you have the kind of dangerous love interest.
Yeah, and he can't love her for certain reasons. And this is kind of one of the issues that I think a lot of people have brought up with this movie, is that sometimes the villains are more interesting than the main character.
I think that's not true of this film.
I don't think so.
Yeah,
I think a lot of movies it can be, especially modern movies. I feel like a lot of times
Dark Knight. I mean,
yeah,
perfect example of that.
Yeah, exactly. I think that the replicants in this are very interesting, but it just shows that at a certain point, Deckard, he doesn't really want to be doing this, but he realizes he not only does he kind of have to, but that it's almost beneficial for him at some point. Especially when he basically one of the replicants becomes a love interest for him.
Yeah,
and it's just beneficial to him to try and take care of this issue, or he's like he wants to learn more about these replicants or why they're doing this. I think this movie, especially since the more you watch it, the more you like it.
Definitely.
Because there's so many layers to it, and it definitely is one of those movies where it has the deeper meaning behind it. Is a lot better than the surface plot.
Definitely. This was a film that I analyzed in my theory class for my English degree, and we spent lots of time talking about basically theories about what it means to be real, being human versus artificial intelligence. What's the difference? Can you tell that you're real if you're not? Things like this that philosophers have explored time and time again since really the 20th century.
That's what I think is one of the greatest things about this movie, is that kind of question. The fact that a movie can spur that kind of question.
Yeah.
Is what makes us human? At what point are we considered human, or do we have humanity? And I think that's totally awesome, because a lot of movies make you say question like sanity or anything like that. Even like a movie like Pi, or even like Black Swan, or things that where it's like, there's this reality that's not linking up with what this person and what everyone else sees, right?
Yeah.
Or even Fight Club. That's one of the most popular ones, where the character is perceiving the world a different way.
Yep.
Blade Runner, the world is being perceived the way that he sees it, right?
Consistently.
And you still come away with these questions about life.
Yeah.
Like, what would you do if you only had 4 years of your life to live to develop every single thing about your person? Would you be the same person? If somebody had created you to be a certain person, would you be that person?
Yeah. And if you were created versus born, do you have more or less worth than someone who was born?
Yeah. It's really, really interesting. You may not get all that the first time you watch it. In fact, I think most people won't. They probably would just be trying to follow the plot.
Yeah.
Because
there's a lot that happens in this movie.
There's both a lot that happens and not a lot that happens, which is, it's hard to explain unless you've seen it.
I also think people will initially get distracted, and I think it's to the film's benefit, by the cinematography, because the cinematography itself is very beautiful. Yeah,
a lot of people say that that's probably the best thing about this movie, who don't like that kind of daydreamy kind of thing with it. But yeah, this movie's freaking amazing, and it was one of the hardest movies I think to make in terms of shots, because they would focus so hard on getting one specific shot for so long, but then when you see it in the movie, you're like, okay, that makes total sense. And you don't have to question it. It's just amazing.
I agree.
The Tyrell Corporation or any of the miniatures or anything like that, it's so seamless. And I'm just surprised by that.
It's very surprising for an 80s movie to begin with. And I think that's one of the things that I appreciate about this movie the most, is that what they did with the budget they had in the year that they did it in. Like, there are no movies like Blade Runner that came out in the year that Blade Runner came out. The
top movie for that year was E.T. So it was competing with a very, very happy movie. If not the happiest movie, like, with a happy ending and everything.
And I think that's why a lot of times Blade Runner is kind of overlooked. I mean, I won't say that it's overlooked in the sense that nobody knows about it.
Especially today.
I would say, unless you're really a film person, I feel like a lot of people don't know about Blade Runner.
I would say that's really true. But the people who really like it really like it.
Yeah.
There's 5 different versions of the movie.
Various
the
director's cuts.
Yeah, the biggest difference is that in one version, it's kind of hinting that the character might be a replicant himself, and then the other one doesn't really have that hint thrown at it.
Yeah.
And apparently, with the new sequel coming up, apparently he was a replicant or something.
Yeah.
So.
Well, isn't that all kind of based off of what was actually portrayed in the book, too?
Kinda. The guy in the book really isn't.
Yeah.
Because it's based on a book called Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep?
Yeah.
Which, while it has a lot of the same themes, it's more about, at least what I got out of it, was that it was more about like a class system. Like, what is your meaning in not only the world, but in society?
Yeah.
Like, what's your worth if you're not worth anything in society?
That's another thing we analyzed in the film. My theory class was like class systems and stuff like that.
Yeah. There's definitely a lot of differences between the book and the movie. They're both good in their own ways.
Yeah.
I think some people don't like the way that Philip K. Dick writes stories sometimes.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a little dry.
Perhaps.
Yeah. But I freaking love this movie. This is my favorite movie of all time. But man, it's a good one. It has a whole bunch of different things that have grown out of it. Of course, the biggest thing is that it pretty much invented the cyberpunk look.
Yep.
And there's all these movies that rip it off, and
it kind of brought back film noir in a sense.
Yeah, I would say that too.
Yeah.
Well, it helped because the way it's done, it's not dated to being super 80s, even though there is like a lot of neon and stuff like that. But because it is a very timeless movie, because of the way that it's shot, and
it's the future, but you don't really know when in the future.
Yeah, so I feel like because it's more timeless than, say, something like Chinatown, which is from the 70s and looks like it's supposed to be like from the 40s?
Yeah.
Which is kind of dated. I think a lot of people can relate to that dark sort of look, and especially today, the whole dystopian thing is a lot more popular and looking at the world in a more bleak way.
Yeah. If it's a film you haven't seen before, I would definitely recommend checking it out, especially with a lot of the films that have come out recently. I think it's a good film to look into. Dystopian films and anti-hero films are very popular right now.
Yeah.
That's where, film companies seem to be spending most of their money. And so I think that honestly, Blade Runner would probably do better now as a release than it did in 1982.
Yeah, it wasn't really successful when it was released.
Yeah.
But yeah, even movies like Mad Max, Fury Road, and everything like that, where the character just does not want to be doing this stuff, really. Yep. And it's very similar to this.
I agree. And a perfect example of that, and the fact that it would probably do better now, is the fact that the Mad Max sequel was very successful.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there actually is a planned sequel coming up. And they're supposed to be shooting it next year. They actually have, they've been saying that forever, but they actually have like a director and a cinematographer and everything on it. So I'm hoping that it gets made. And a lot of people have asked me because, like I said, Blade Runner is my favorite movie. If you've ever been in my apartment, I have many copies of it and a lot of little memorabilia things. I am not one of those people who's like, if you make this movie, you're going to ruin it. Because there's nothing that could ruin Blade Runner for me. Like,
oh, definitely not.
To me,
even if they made a terrible sequel, Blade Runner would still be Blade Runner. Like,
yeah, I know people who say like, oh, well, if they make the sequel, then I just can't not think about the sequel.
I kind of disagree with that, though.
I disagree with that because it's made in a different time. Usually, you know how they make movies basically set up now to make 3 of them.
Yep. Trilogies.
Like, yeah, you can't. It's hard to look at a lot of these movies as not the trilogies, right? Because they're from the beginning they're set to be a trilogy, or they're set to be 2 movies. Back then, that
wasn't a thing yet. I mean, Star Wars is kind of the first, I feel like, movie
planned to be
that.
3. Yeah. And so you look at those as like, oh, that's one chunk of a movie. But something like Die Hard or something like that, where the first one was made and it's like, okay, that's successful. Let's make a second one, I guess. And then just 8 years later, let's make a third one.
Well, and even Star Wars, each film kind of serves as an independent film. You can watch one without feeling like you need to watch the others. There is a resolution to each of those movies.
Yeah, especially with the first one, because they didn't know if they were going to make the other ones. But I mean, I swear, if they never made it, then it would have made total sense.
Yep.
They're like, oh, okay. That's the end.
Yeah.
The Blue Death Star.
There wouldn't necessarily need to be Star Wars episode 5 and 6.
Yeah.
But I'm glad that they made them.
Yeah. One of the things I want to talk about that was influential in this film, or at least I still find a lot of people talk about it, you'll see it on Pinterest and Tumblr, is the fashion in this movie.
Yeah.
And very 80s in a lot of ways, but then still very modern. I think it kind of came around a little bit with the whole tucked in neat sort of like.
Well, 80s things are also very popular again right now.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, but Pris, of course, does Daryl Hannah's character. She's blonde and she wears like this kind of white face makeup and like black and everything. And man, people dress up like her all the time. She has this sheer outfit on with like a black shirt or black kind of top. And so it's very, very popular for people dressing like her. And then, I don't know, black trench coats are always cool.
No, I agree.
Yeah, classic. So, as far as me recommending Blade Runner, I wholly recommend it.
I can't disagree with you there. I don't think you can really say much that's bad about Blade Runner.
Yeah, I think... Okay, actually, I will say one thing that I think could have been better in this movie, and it's not, which is a bummer. And that is, I think, the love story.
Yeah.
Now, I think...
That definitely is missing.
Yeah, it exists in here.
It is implied more than anything else, I feel like.
Yeah, and they have like a sex scene, or because it's an American movie, it's kind of like the lead up to the sex scene.
But they don't spend much time there.
Well, it's kind of like rapey, like in the way that she's trying to leave, and he is very, very rough with her, and is like, "Tell me to kiss you," you know, and everything. She's like, "Kiss me," like she seems like really not that into it.
Well, and that's why I kind of like it. Kind of reminds me of film noir from like 50s and 60s.
Yeah,
it
like
has that.
You're my woman, kind of thing. Dame walked in,
push her against the wall, and not that we condone that sort of thing.
Yeah, I know. Well, it's uncomfortable. Because I've seen a version where they actually because they cut that scene down a lot.
Yeah,
and I've seen a version where the scene was like a lot longer, and it's a lot more romantic.
Yeah.
I think that was way better. They should just put it in the movie that way. But then with the way it's cut, it's a little...
Feels a little rapier.
Yeah, if that's a word. But then just also, I get that they kind of have this budding romance in this awful situation. But it just could have been done better. And that's the only thing I think that this movie kind of doesn't succeed in, is making it feel like these are two people. These are two things. Two, like beings who... really care about each other and will fight for each other.
Yeah.
It just to the level that they are, not to the point where they're hopelessly in love. Like I can see him fighting because like, oh, this is a tragic story. But the fact that they're like in supreme love, this just does not come across for me.
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah. That's my only real complaint with the movie. Everything else, it's perfect.
It's definitely a great film.
Yeah.
All right, I think that pretty much wraps up Blade Runner.
Yeah. For now. It's going to be our news segment for this episode. It's probably going to be a little bit shorter than the other ones. We just kind of want to briefly talk about this. And I'll let Robert take over.
All right. Well, Jesus and the Mary Chain have announced...
The Jesus and the Mary Chain.
The Jesus and the Mary Chain have announced that they will be recording a new album. They've actually just started recording. So there isn't really any, teasers or new song leaks that have come out yet. But we haven't seen anything from the Jesus and the Mary Chain in a while, and this could be interesting. It could be a good album for them, potentially. They've talked a little bit about it, and they feel confident about it. They think it's going to be a very mature album for them. Mm-hmm. It could lead to a tour, and I would like to see that happen.
It's one of those bands, unfortunately, that people just associate them with one album, and it's their first album.
Yeah.
So it's a Psycho Candy. Yeah, that's like literally the only thing I ever hear anybody talk about with him. I'll be excited for a new album. I'll definitely give it a listen. They're definitely maybe not necessarily so heavily associated with goth. They're more associated with the shoegazy post-punk kind of thing.
Yeah, well, it's like a lot of goths like things like Echo and the Bunnymen. And
exactly. Yeah. It's pretty much if you like those kind of bands, and you would like the Jesus and the Mary Chain if you never heard them before. I think it's good. Like I said in most of our episodes, I like whenever a band tries to do something new, especially if they...
I like that
talented.
There's been time between records, like especially if a lot of the other records aren't as well received, they've taken some time away. So I feel like this is going to be a very different record from the last record they made.
Yeah, so that's what usually happens with a lot of bands. They kind of start driving themselves into the ground, and it's like
like you talk about David Bowie's career. David Bowie has a great career, massive changes throughout it.
Yeah,
but kind of in the 90s, I feel like he took. Early 2000s.
No way. I do not think so. I think it was more like the late 80s he took a huge dip, and then in the 90s he was able to reinvent himself.
Kind of. I feel like for a portion of the 90s I agree with you, but
Oh man, it gives me like because what's that one called? It's like the album has like Love and the Alien on it. Oh yeah, but there's like those last two albums of the '80s were so bad. They did Tin Machine.
Yeah. Well, anyways, my point was though that he recently came out with. He's called The Next Day.
Yeah.
And that's a fantastic album.
Yeah.
And he had a long time away from making music before that record came out.
Yeah. Well, Dave Bowie thing's crazy, man. Yeah, like a heart attack. And,
yeah. He will never tour again, he says.
Yeah, that crap's crazy. If you guys ever want to, because I know a lot of people are asking David Bowie tour like all the time.
Yeah.
Seriously, all the time I get asked about like, oh, you think David Bowie will ever tour? Because a lot of people just ask music opinions.
I really don't think so.
I think it would be maybe he'd probably do like a presentation show or something like that,
maybe
or like
a one-off show. Yeah, he might do an appearance on television or something, but that's about it.
I mean, you gotta understand. I mean, he nearly lost his life.
Yeah.
In like the early 2000s. I mean, he nearly died.
Yeah.
So.
I feel like a lot of people say, well, there's lots of, bands that have members who have cancer who are still touring and stuff. But I don't think people realize Dave Bowie really almost died. It just wasn't that he had a heart attack and he overcame it or whatever. Like, he came very close to dying.
Yeah, I mean, if you just want an example to see just how hard it was on him, just look up his last performance he ever did live. I'm pretty sure it's the last one he ever did, where he performs Life on Mars. I mean, he just looks completely trashed. I mean, he still has the friggin' hospital bandage thing on his arm, and you could just tell. I mean, it's a long road to do all that stuff, and touring is extremely hard on your body.
It's very taxing.
Yeah, and especially if he just isn't into it, like, you just don't need to. And the fact that he is such an artist, he still creates things. He still is,
and he's proven that he's still capable of creating something that's good.
Yeah. I love that. Oh, I love the song Sue or In a Season of Crime.
Yeah.
I love that song. But that one got like some super mixed reviews.
Yeah.
As far as mine, I love it.
But that new album in general just was generally well received.
Yeah.
By fans, critics.
Yeah. So, Jesus and Mitch to come out with the new album. Got super sidetracked. Can't mention David Bowie, man. But yeah, so we're looking forward to that. And I think if they can do this new album, it's Jesus and Mitch, not David Bowie. But yeah. I think if they could do it in a way where they try to do a mature sound while also appealing to their, people who would most listen to them, is like a lot of shoegazy kind of people, or a lot of people who are kind of post-punk or new wave or anything like that.
People who like Tears for Fears or Echo and the Bunnymen. Or
to some extent that. I think if they can do that and make it and present
make it still sound current.
Well, I don't like. Doesn't really matter anymore at this point.
I think there's some relevance. I mean, you can't exactly make the same album you made back.
Well, of course, but I think actually one of the things will be if they can make the music good, if they can make the whole package with it, like the music videos and the
presentation, their fashion.
I think if they can make all that congeal, into a good way, because I know that the thing a lot of new bands do is they just will put out the album, do here's the official lyric video. And the cover's usually like some kind of lame thing. And I think if they can make everything come together with this, just not only in terms of the music, like making good music is of course the most important thing. But I think if they actually really want to have like a really big resurgence for it, I think that if they just have to really kind of think about what they're going to do in terms of actually what they're presenting.
I agree.
Yeah. So that's our news.
That pretty much wraps it up.
All right, so moving on to our second film, we're going to go 12 years into the future to the distant year of 1994.
Very dystopian 90s.
Yeah. So we have a movie kind of like Blade Runner in some ways.
In some ways not. Also.
In some ways not. Yeah, a lot of ways not. But it's The Crow. Brandon Lee.
This is pretty much a staple of Gothic film, I would say.
Definitely.
Yeah.
This movie it almost is one of those things where it's so popular that people hate it because of its popularity.
No, I know a lot of people who really dislike The Crow, and I understand their arguments.
Yeah,
I like The Crow a lot.
Yeah, I thought this is a really good movie, and it had been a while since I'd seen it.
Yeah,
and so I rewatched it for this episode. I liked it more this time than actually when I had initially seen it in first few times.
I'm glad you rewatched it, because I remember in our initial talks about this, you seemed a little hesitant about talking about
I don't know. I was never really the biggest fan of The Crow. I think it's just a little clumsy in its execution, but it's totally understandable.
Given the history of the film.
Yeah, exactly. It was kind of a mess, and we'll talk about that in just a little bit. But I really appreciate it for what it is.
Yeah.
It's a very good story.
Oh, definitely.
And what they do with it, at least visually and through dialogue, is very, very commendable.
I agree. Basically, we have a story. We have two young lovers who are murdered on their wedding night, which is Halloween.
Shelley and Eric.
Yep. Eric Draven, Shelley Webster. They're killed by the basically local gangs / underlords of the city.
Yeah.
Over starting a petition about rent control and...
Yeah, basically they're filing a complaint against these people, this like basically mob corporation. And
so these gangsters show up, and basically to put some fear in them, things get more out of hand than they had planned. Shelley ends up getting raped and killed. Ugh. It's pretty brutal.
Yeah.
Eric gets shot and stabbed multiple times and eventually pushed out a window.
Yeah.
And falls to his death. And basically what we're left with is we have mythology that surrounds this animal.
The crow.
The crow. And basically the folklore is that crows carry spirits into the underworld. And if there is something tragic that happens in that person's death, something too sad for them to travel to the underworld, they might remain here. And if something perhaps extremely tragic and extremely brutal happens to them, the crow might bring their soul back to life in order to right what was made wrong. And so Eric Draven is brought back to life by a crow and is given supernatural powers. Mm-hmm. Basically, he's immortal and a superhero, more or less.
Yeah, basically a gritty 90s superhero.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. So he gets brought back to life and to seek revenge on the guys who basically raped and killed his
wife and him, or bride to be, and him.
Yeah, and throughout that he helps this girl named Sarah and this police officer.
Yeah,
and it's
Sarah's this girl that him and Shelley have been looking after.
Yeah,
her mom's a drug addict. Kind of hangs out with the slum lords and.
Yeah, so while he's murdering all these people, he's trying to make it a better life for her too.
Definitely,
which kind of adds that little bit of like, I'm not just mindlessly killing all these people kind of thing.
And she does a lot of the narration for the movie, which I kind of enjoy.
Yeah, it makes sense that they would need a different perspective.
Yeah.
In order to describe or to show like, oh, this character's grand scheme, the effect of it, at least on city and everything like that.
Well, especially because Eric Draven doesn't have a full, at least when he's brought back, a full understanding of everything that's happened. Kind of has to re-piece together his life and how he died, how Shelley died, what happened.
Yeah, he just knows he's going to kill these people.
Yeah.
And kind of knows why. Like,
yeah.
I think in terms of the plot, it's pretty good. It's a very basic kind of avenging plot.
Yeah. The story behind the plot, I think, is perhaps what's most interesting about the movie. It was originally a comic whose author wrote it to get over the death of his girlfriend who was killed in an automobile accident. Mm-hmm. She was killed by a drunk driver. And so this is his fantasy world in which he gets to avenge her death, basically.
Yeah. It's a pretty good reason to write this.
Yeah.
Yeah. Makes a lot of sense, especially with how tragic it is.
Yeah. And that's why I don't feel like a lot of people complain about maybe some of the love story being a little campy or a little overdone. But I think when you go through something like that, I feel like you can't help but write something that is a little bit like that.
Oh, yeah. I could totally understand that.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially love is just like so powerful that sometimes it's just heartbreak. So
well, it's the classic saying that at the center of every movie, it's really just a love story.
Yeah. Yeah. Look at Blackfish. I don't know. I was trying to think of like some movie that has no love story.
Yeah.
But people love the orcas.
Yep.
So, yeah, I guess every movie does. I want to talk about some of the behind the scenes stuff with this movie. And, of course, the legacy. So, we talked about the plot, but, yeah, there was some pretty messed up stuff that happened with this movie. And it kind of leads to it. Some of the complaints or some of the things I want to talk about later about it.
All right. Well, so basically, as all you guys know, or probably know, Brandon Lee, who plays Eric Draven in this film, is killed during the production of the film.
Yeah. Not only is he killed during the movie, he's actually killed in real life.
Yeah.
during the making of this movie, so they kind of had
by the filmmakers, essentially, or the people operating the film.
Yeah, there's a whole court case about it. They had to develop the film of him being killed,
mm-hmm.
and it was one of the actors had basically fired a gun that they thought was going to have a.
They had been basically building their own blanks instead of using proper blanks for guns.
Yeah, and so one of the bullets got discharged, and unfortunately, it was the wrong kind of blank in there.
Yep.
Because there's a lot of different kinds of blanks for movies.
Yeah.
And so this one was a much more powerful one and killed him. I mean, it's awful. It's even crazier because Brandon Lee, who plays Eric Draven, was Bruce Lee's son.
Yeah.
And Bruce Lee died in a very mysterious, tragic way when he was in the middle of making one of his movies. And that's so weird.
Oh, definitely.
Apparently, actually, Bruce Lee, I think Bruce Lee or Bruce Lee's grandpa or something like that said that he had seen him die, like his son die or something like that, and it was like years before.
Really?
Yeah, it's this really crazy story. Something like that. Feel free to look it up. I think it's a really, really interesting story. There's a lot of kind of myths around this whole death, and people still are really focused on what happened. And the actor who actually fired the bullet says he's still traumatized to this day about what he did, and he has nightmares about it.
Well, there's a lot of cast that left after that happened. They were unwilling to work on the movie.
Yeah, it's not surprising. I mean, it's awful.
Yeah. I actually just quickly looked up because I wanted to know what age he was when he died. He's 28, but if he was 27, then he belonged to the 27 club.
Oh, okay. Even the little girl plays Sarah. She didn't act for... Yeah, I think she's only ever been in one other movie, and it was 10 years later or something. But the basic way they tried to get around it was the fact that because he died in the middle of filming. Like, they weren't done with the movie at all.
Oh, not at all.
And so they basically had to use stunt doubles and body
CGI
doubles.
His face onto the body.
The CGI in the face is crazy because it actually really holds up.
Yeah, they actually did a really good job.
I was really surprised because...
It's pretty hard to tell whenever they do that in that film.
Yeah, they did it where he's like... falling, and then they had to CGI his face when he's falling, and it's so seamless, especially for a movie released in 1994.
Yeah, where we're basically just kind of really getting into what CGI can do. Yeah,
and they managed to do this so perfectly. There's even the one part where he breaks the mirror, and like his reflection in the mirror was all CGI. Like they edited his face to be in all the cracks. That is crazy well done. In fact, there's a lot of movies today that don't even do that well.
Oh, I completely agree. And that's one thing I will commend about this movie is that I think so often people complain about the CGI in films, but I would say the CGI in this film is actually pretty damn good.
Yeah, I totally commend it.
Yeah.
It works completely. And they made it really fit in with the dark look and the high contrast sort of thing. Because this movie... If there's one thing you can talk about this movie and talk about for days with it, it's the way it looks and the way it sounds.
And this is, again, probably where it gets some comparisons to Blade Runner.
Yeah.
Kind of a similar color grading.
Yeah. It's a dystopian city. It's always raining.
Yeah. There's a lot of scenes that look similar to scenes from Blade Runner.
Yeah.
In particular, the hot dog scene.
Yeah. Because in the beginning of the movie... He's eating somewhere, and he's like, "Oh, give me the noodles and everything like that."
Yeah.
And then same kind of thing, and it's like, oh, then the whole plot begins and all this crazy stuff.
Yeah.
And same kind of thing inside of this movie. They keep going back to this hot dog stand, and everything has the same kind of feeling, like it's always raining, and this is their hangout or whatever. Just even like the opening shot where there's all the fires in the city and everything like that, and Blade Runner begins with a giant cityscape with fires coming out of towers. So a lot of people have compared the look to that. The plot is...
very different.
It's very different. I mean, technically, it's a guy going around trying to kill a certain number of people to complete his task.
Yeah, a lot of people...
And then they have a big face-off at the end with the main guy.
A lot of people compare it to the Tim Burton Batman films.
Yeah, I could see that.
I don't necessarily agree.
I feel like this movie does it... The whole gritty thing, it feels a lot less forced.
That's what, and that's why I like this movie so much. I'm not personally a big fan of the Tim Burton Batman films.
I am.
A lot of people are.
Yeah,
they're not bad movies. I feel like a lot of things are overdone in them, and you could say that a lot of things are overdone in The Crow. However, I feel like they pull off the whole anti-hero vibe a lot better than those films do.
Yeah, and I think that one of the reasons that it really works in this movie is Brandon Lee does a really good job of not only making you feel sympathy for his character, he's pretty brutally killing these guys. I mean, the one guy who's like a drug, he sticks all the hypodermic needles into his chest. Yeah. It's not like these are like, I shoot him and he's dead. Like, he's like fucking making these guys pay for what they did. And it's funny that they make the guy very likable, you know, in that he has a very clear mission he's doing it for, because they are paying for their sins, basically sort of thing. And I just find it super, super cool. Like,
I think so too.
Yeah, and just the way he reacts to everything. Yeah, he's being very almost comedic in the way he kills these people.
Well, and that's where I like to draw similarities between this movie, and I don't feel like it comes up very often, but between this and The Dark Knight.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that, actually.
I kind of feel like Heath Ledger channels a little bit of Brandon Lee when he plays the Joker.
Yeah. The Crow is definitely a little more...
it's a little campier.
Well, The Crow's a little more poetic.
Yeah.
Because he references poetry, and I think he also references the Bible or something at one point.
Yeah. But there's still jokes nonetheless. I mean, he walks into a scene openly saying, Jesus walks into an inn, says, "Can you put me up for the night?" or something like that.
Yeah. I could definitely see that correlation between the Joker and the Crow. And I would agree with that. Even the hair. Is
the
like,
face.
The look, everything.
Yep.
Even of course, it's done a lot differently in The Dark Knight, but the scene where he just goes in to face all the bad guys. He just goes into the boardroom. He's just like, hey.
Yeah.
Like, whatever. He's not afraid, you know? He's just like, okay. And
well, I've heard someone recently make the argument that the hero in The Dark Knight is actually the Joker and not Batman.
Oh, yeah.
That argument's been made before. Yeah. But I kind of feel like this movie definitely supports that. Like, if we're comparing the two films, Eric Draven's definitely the hero, even though he's sort of a villain on some sense. Like,
well, it's just the fact that the way that they film it and the way he talks and everything, you can just tell. They try to make the character seem like he's enjoying killing these people.
Yeah.
And a lot of people wouldn't feel that somebody who's killing a whole bunch of people would be like, oh, like he's like a really good guy. But but they portray him as a really good guy, and in the movie you don't think he's an awful person.
Yeah.
Like in Blade Runner, right? He hates killing those people.
Yeah.
Like he hates killing them. And he's like tormented, and he has to like drink a whole bunch to try and even like steady his nerves because he doesn't want to kill these people. Whereas in this one, he's just, the revenge is so heavy in his heart that he's like, I'm going to make these people suffer.
Yeah, there's not even any need to drown the pain. He hardly ever drinks in this movie.
Yeah.
I think he smokes like 2 cigarettes in the film.
Yeah. My biggest problem with this movie, I don't really have a problem with the fact that they kind of had to find a way to make the movie work.
Yeah.
Because you can tell, like, because he died, there was some things that are a little sloppier.
Yeah, it's kind of chopped together a little bit.
Yeah, they just had to get the scenes in there, and the body doubles, they had to make it work,
and some of the script had to be rewritten.
Yeah, some of the editing's a little bit off. I'll say the fact that they keep cutting back to the club to start scenes.
I can't stand how many times they use the slow-mo scene in that movie. They use slow-mo so often. That's a big complaint for me for this movie, and I love it.
That's never bothered me, the slow motion stuff.
Well, I don't mind if you do it like once or twice, but I swear there's at least 5 scenes in which they use slow motion.
Yeah, it doesn't bother me, so that is what it is, I guess.
And then another thing I feel like one thing this movie suffers with is sometimes the script suffers a little bit. I think they could have written some of the girls' lines a little bit better.
Yeah. Onions make you fart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very 80s feeling. In that sense, it's not as timeless as a film like Blade Runner.
I don't think this movie's quite as timeless as that, because especially they use a lot of what were at the time, say, modern bands or kind of that time. The Stone Temple Pilots song in there. There's a Nine Inch Nails song in there.
The Cure.
Yeah, The Cure. The Cure song, Burn, is one of the most popular Cure songs ever, but they never even play anything from it. Apparently, there's a piece of trivia about this one. Apparently, some fan called out, play Burn. And Simon Gallup didn't even know what it was. He's like, oh, didn't we write that for a soundtrack or something? Didn't even remember it.
Yeah.
But man, that's easily one of their most popular songs.
Definitely.
Because it was in this movie.
I think that's another thing that, although it dates the film to a certain extent, It's one of the things that I really like about this movie is the soundtrack.
The music's awesome. I have the soundtrack in my car right now.
Yeah.
It's freaking great. Okay, I like and dislike the soundtrack in some ways. Okay.
Yeah, there's some interesting
It's kind of like some like sort of rap metal-y stuff on it. Like it kind of sounds like Rage Against the Machine.
And some very 90s grunge-ish songs that are about.
Hey, Medicine, the Time Baby song, that's a good song.
No, that's a good song, but there are other ones that are just not quite as...
I think the Stone Temple Pilots is one of the...
the Stone Temple Pilots song
is one of the weirder ones on this.
It just didn't feel like it fit in the movie.
Well, I mean, I think that's why they have the bad guys playing it. They have most of the likable characters, and whenever they introduce them, it's like play with, really heavy music and everything like that, and then bad guys listen to Stone Temple Pilots.
Yeah.
I don't know. It is what it is. Especially on soundtrack, it feels a little off, but the soundtrack's kind of all over the place. Has some industrial stuff, some like rap metal-y sort of things. But I mean, it's 94, so it's kind of the beginning of that transition to it, to sort of doing those like corn and things like that. So I'm not surprised that there's some hint of that in this.
And I will say, as far as this being a movie that appeals to the goth subculture, I think it does so by one, having a soundtrack that very much would appeal to a lot of goth people. And two, the fashion for this movie is very gothic, very 90s kind of goth looking.
It's actually good because I feel this kind of fashion in this movie actually almost relates more today than any of the other movies that we're going to talk about.
Definitely.
Because the whole 90s thing is like in full swing right now. The whole grunge look.
Well, really just retro in general, like 80s, 90s, 70s, and 60s are all very big retro decades right now.
Yeah, and I think that this one, because it combines a sort of darker look, a sleeker kind of look to, grunge, especially the girl, and she's wearing like torn up fishnets and like Doc Martens.
And she's got, shaved sides. She's got an undercut basically. A lot of girls are rocking undercuts again.
Yeah, so I'm not surprised people are pulling from this now because it's totally like that kind of movie where you're just like, oh wow, these people look cool.
Yeah, it's right up the alley of today's fashion.
Exactly. Like if you could probably take a still from this, make it like kind of desaturated, and then put
it in black and white, post on Tumblr. Tons of girls
and
would
be like post grunge new pastel guy, or something. I don't know if people tagging these things, but biggest problem. You know what my biggest problem with this movie is?
What?
Say guess.
Enlighten me.
Main villain.
Yeah,
that's my only problem with this movie.
I'll give you that. He's kind of a boring villain.
Yeah, I think they do that, and I really was hoping that they wouldn't do it. Even the first time I saw it, and it was so obvious that they were going to do it. Is that he goes through and brutally kills all these people, right? Kills every single other person in the whole movie, and as in all these explosions and like all this crap, and then of course. Right at the end, he gets wounded to some point of where he and
he no longer has powers,
and he and the main bad guy are equal.
That's a spoiler, by the way.
Oh yeah, spoiler. Oh yeah,
whatever.
Spoiler warning. So, him and the main bad guy at the end duke it out on top of like a building and throw out all these things, and it's just so predictable what's going to happen. Of course, he's going to be the bad guy right as he's going to die or something like that. And then he's going to be... It's just... Yeah, I just hated that. Like, the whole movie at that point, it makes such a point to make him seem so powerful.
Yep. And he dies in such a boring way.
Yeah, I just thought that was really very lackluster for me. But that's my only really big issue with this film is that I don't like the main villain. I think he could have been done a lot better. They should have made him more imposing in a way. Like I get it. He does a whole bunch of blow. Like they have him snorting cocaine, and
it still feels like very much an 80s movie, even though it's a 90s movie.
Yeah. And I gotta say, love the way that he dies, where he drops on the gargoyle and all his blood spills out the mouth. That is freaking awesome.
It's a great shot.
Like I said, I can excuse the editing. I can excuse the fact that like some of the writing's a little bit off because they're trying to write for a broad audience, so they don't want to use like some things. They want to make it as accessible as possible. Yeah. And of course, editing around to death is the fact that they made the movie as coherent as possible is surprising to me. I couldn't have done that, but could have made a villain a lot better.
Yeah, definitely.
I like the actor. He's inside of Alien Resurrection too.
Yeah, they could have made him a lot more three-dimensional. Yeah. He really feels kind of like, I don't want to call him a stereotype, but I kind of feel like he is. Yeah. Like, he's a stereotype of the slumlord villain who controls the city.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And then you have I think it's Bai Ling, the actress.
Yeah,
who's like
his half sister
lover.
Yeah.
Chick. So she plays a pretty funny character. I know that a lot of people like her.
She's probably more interesting than he is.
I think she is, just because she's a little more out there. But again, I totally understand that you could not put that character as being like, yeah, she controls all these things. No way.
No, she's definitely not as strong of a female character to be able to be the main villain.
Yeah, they could have done it, but they
could have. But
they just made her too like airy.
Yeah, they made her. They do what a lot of films are guilty of prior to the 2000s, which is make women kind of supporting roles to men.
A little sidekick, you know, kind of like at most.
Yeah.
So she's still kind of like
there's a name. There's like a test for whether or not a film has a three-dimensional female character.
Yeah, I've heard that. Yeah.
I forget what it's called, but this film definitely doesn't pass it.
No, it's not. So that's Crow. Do you have anything else you want to say?
I guess the only other thing I would say about this film is that I would highly recommend that you check out the comic if you've seen the movie or are interested in the movie at all, because the comic really gives you the full story and it doesn't suffer from all the things that the movie suffers from, editing problems and the death of the lead actor in the middle of the filming. And so I feel like you really get a more complete work out of the comic, and the art for the comic is just beautiful, really.
Yeah. I can just throw in some continued history here for the heck of it. There's 2 movie sequels to this.
Which you should not see.
So, The City of Angels is slightly liked by some people. I'd say they still try to keep some of the same ideas and the whole dystopian thing in this. But then the third one, the third Crow movie, is awful.
Yeah.
And then they also have I think it's a television series.
Yeah.
So, if you're going to watch anything, like if you want a little bit more Crow, I would say just watch City of Angels.
I'd leave it at that, really.
I saw it a long time ago, but it's definitely not as well done. Like, they didn't...
I honestly, I don't see the need for City of Angels or the rest of the...
Oh, I would agree. Sequels. I totally agree. Like,
I think they should have just left it at the Crow.
I think what they could have done is just maybe expanded through maybe some other medium, maybe like a video game or
it's like the comics continue, and I think that's
exactly. Like comics, like that makes a lot more sense to me. They could have done like a really good movie sequel to this, maybe in the same universe.
Yeah.
But the fact that they have to focus on this first movie so much because that's what people want to see, I think that's the biggest issue with it.
This is again another one of those movies that became a trilogy that was not supposed to be a trilogy.
Yeah, exactly. See, it happened a lot more back then.
Yeah, and that's why for a long time sequels got a bad rap, is because films now are almost expected to have sequels.
Yeah, it's gonna be a big movie.
Yeah,
right?
But for a long time, when you heard that there was a sequel to a movie, you groaned. You were like, no, why are they doing that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's The Crow. It's a good movie.
I recommend it.
Just go watch it, man.
Yeah,
it's just good.
Read the comic.
Read the comic too. Yeah. All right. We talk about Let the Right One In.
This is technically a horror film.
Yeah, it's okay. The horror film is like aspect of this is not as pronounced anymore. I think because people are so desensitized. To like
people
what
associate horror films with essentially slasher films now.
Well, now it's like even like Saw. They're like, oh yeah, it's not like literally the close up of the knife going in, like
gore porn, basically.
Yeah. So I think that this is definitely a horror film. It's almost like a romantic film in a way. I think
it's like everything a horror film always should have been, but never was.
Yeah, I would agree with that. This movie, I really enjoyed, and I had seen it, years ago.
Yeah,
and I thought it was okay, and everything, but I really sat down and watched it in like the quiet. Just kind of took my time with it. And I really enjoyed this one.
No, this is definitely one of my favorite films. I would put this in my top 5, I would say.
Of horror films or just in general?
Just in general.
Wow, dang.
I really like this movie.
Here, I'm just going to go over the plot first. So there's this boy named Oscar. And he meets this girl named Eli.
Yes.
And so...
Set in Sweden.
Yeah, set in Sweden, so...
Late 80s.
Yeah, late 80s. It's kind of important, actually, because they don't really hinted at. I don't think. They hinted at
they hint at it, but it's never mentioned.
Yeah,
really.
It doesn't need to be though, which I think is good. But so this kid, he's bullied a lot, specifically by his group of bullies, and he's kind of humiliated a lot, and he's kind of been outcast in a way, and he's
neglected by his parents,
and he doesn't really. You get the feeling that this character doesn't. He kind of wants to fit in, but he doesn't understand the idea of how to do it.
Yeah, he doesn't understand how to be one of the kids.
Yeah. This one does a really good job with the characters.
So, definitely.
Yeah, so he meets this girl named Ely.
Mm-hmm.
I think inside of America we would say Ellie, but in the movie they always say Ely.
If there weren't multiple strong characters in this movie, I would almost call this a character analysis.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, pretty much every single character in this movie, aside from the bullies, who are extremely tropey.
Yeah.
Like, that's the only thing which I think, but they have to basically be to balance out Oscar's head in the clouds sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But he meets this girl, lives in his complex or whatever, and
there's obviously something strange about her.
She doesn't get cold. She's a little bit she's like the opposite of Oscar. She's so focused and on point. Like she's 100% in the moment.
Yep.
Whereas Oscar just always seems to have his head in the clouds.
She's very focused. She's very willed. She knows exactly what she wants.
Yeah.
She's very pragmatic.
Yeah. And they meet and they kind of start this friendship, and it just kind of goes from there. And
there's initially a little resistance on Ely's part in the friendship. She definitely doesn't want to get close to Oscar
for her own reasons.
Yeah. You'll find out as you watch the movie why.
Yeah.
Or perhaps as we talk about it.
Yeah, we're definitely going to give spoilers in this one because it's pretty necessary to talk about anything past the 20-minute mark.
Yeah.
So, why don't you just tell me what you liked before we kind of get into the later part of the movie? What do you like in the beginning of this movie?
Okay, what I like about the beginning of this movie is that right from the beginning, we see Oscar's... I hate to say it, but Oscar's kind of pathetic.
Yeah.
Like, we see that immediately. Like, he gets trampled on by bullies, but he's not so pathetic that you can't empathize with him. Like, really, you can see that there's a will somewhere deep inside Oscar. And the fact that he goes outside at night with his little pocket knife and he's stabbing the tree, kind of recreating these scenarios that he's been put in by the bullies, practicing, trying to gain some kind of sense of self and identity.
Yeah.
The ability to fight back.
I like that they, pretty early on, while they do make him kind of the pathetic, sort of likable character, I do really enjoy the fact that they don't make him 100% innocent.
No, he's definitely a very dark character.
He's obsessed with serial killers. Mm-hmm. He has that little book of deaths and everything like that, and he knows... there's a thing early on in the movie. It's like, well, how did you know that he died before the fire? Yeah. It's like, oh, there's no smoke in his lungs.
Well, and that's what I appreciate about Oscar's character in general, is he does initially come off as being pathetic. But as the film goes on, you see that Oscar is a lot smarter than he comes off as. He's very intelligent. He can put together murder cases. Mm-hmm. He even, I would say, manipulates Ely sometimes when she's used to manipulating him.
Yeah, he does. And... that's one of the things that I like about this character. It makes him feel realistic to me is that he's extremely smart. Mm-hmm. Doesn't seem to have any common sense.
No, none at all.
And I've met a lot of people like that where they're extremely intelligent, but they either lack a social understanding or they have some kind of thing that just doesn't click with the certain situations that they get in. And I feel like he's very much that character, and so it comes off extremely realistic to me. They don't make him the innocent person who's this idol, and they don't make him the screwed up junkie who is like, oh, I need to save, Each of these characters benefits from each other in their own way. And
strange way they kind of mirror each other, and they're both mirrors and foils in a strange way. Mm-hmm. They act as opposites at certain points in the film, but as the film moves along, you see how much more alike they really are.
Yeah, so it really creates this balance for the characters that I think works extremely well. And we're just going to have to get into spoilers because
there's no way to talk about this movie without
because
spoiling a lot of it.
This movie's I think 2 hours long.
Yeah.
And so much of it is dependent on plot spoilers, because once you learn one of the bigger spoilers and then everything
kind of cascades from there.
So spoiler warning for this one. I know we didn't really give any for the other ones, but this one, because it's newer, I'll give a spoiler. Like, I mean, God's sakes, Crow's like freaking 15 years old or something.
Yeah, there's a greater chance that you've already seen Blade Runner or The Crow, whereas you might not yet have seen.
Yeah.
Let the right one in.
Yeah, because this is still on Netflix too.
Yep.
At least at the moment.
Yeah.
I'll say that right now. She's a vampire.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's the whole point of this, is that she's a vampire, and that's why it shows up on all these lists of like best vampire movies at this point. And they portray it pretty realistically in a crazy way, and not in like the like I need to farm somebody for blood or something, or you know, they've done that in a lot of movies or anything like that, like they're ravenous because they need to eat all this stuff. You know, she tries to do it in a very calm way.
She does it for survival.
Yeah.
And she explains that to Ely, or I'm sorry, Ely explains that to Oscar at a certain point in the movie.
Yeah, and it really works. You get the feeling she doesn't want to kill these people.
Yeah.
She doesn't like killing these people.
But it's necessary for her survival, at least. Yeah.
And she has this assistant, I think his name is Hakan or something like that.
Yeah.
I forget what his name is.
I don't know that I call him an assistant, but...
well, yeah, it's like this... She basically lives with this guy, is a much older gentleman, and he basically will go out and try and get the food for her, basically get the blood.
It's questionable whether or not like he's a father figure or perhaps a sexual...
Yeah, so in the original story, apparently it's seen as more of like he's attracted to her. Yeah. And inside this one, it doesn't really appear that, you know, I thought...
They lightly portray it, I feel like, but not very heavily.
Yeah, I would think that they would go that route.
I'm kind of glad that they didn't, though.
Yeah, I think
this story is much more about Oscar and Ely, and if you only have 2 hours to talk about these characters, I don't feel like he's as important of a character as either of them.
Yeah. So you would think that he's been successful for years in getting her blood. Yeah. In the beginning of the movie, they have basically a lot of issues trying to get food. Yeah. And it creates a whole ton of things, like he doesn't get the blood for her in the beginning. She has to actually go out and
hunt.
And kill somebody, and then it becomes this whole crime like that they're trying to figure out, and
which creates danger for her. She might have to flee the city because now there are people looking into her feedings. She gets spotted by someone. Another spoiler.
Like I said, it's pretty much all gonna be spoilers because every single scene builds upon it. Every single scene is so necessary to the next scene at this point. Yeah. After you figure out she's a vampire. But yeah, so she gets spotted, and then she has to flee the scene and has to basically go into hiding, like, you know, try and be like, oh, we got to figure out how to deal with this body, and she has her assistant deal with the body and basically throw in this ice. Yep. And like we said, when we're explaining this, it's better if you've seen this movie for us to explain it.
It's hard to explain because, at this point in the film, we know that Ely's a vampire. Yeah. Oscar does not know that Ely's a vampire, and we see the film from both perspectives. Yeah. And whenever we're in Oscar's perspective, we don't know that Ely's a vampire. We know that there's something strange about her. She's mentioned that she's not a girl. That's a pretty big line.
We're going to talk about... I want to save that for a little bit. Yeah. But yeah, that two kind of perspective thing is really good, and it comes off really well. I feel like in American movies, we constantly bait the audience for that kind of thing. Like, yeah, we know what's happening, so the kind of basically the next scene would be like, oh, they figured out, or something like that. Whereas in this one, they just keep it going. You know, like
the Oscar doesn't find out till almost near the end of the movie.
Yeah, but they make that. It's a very realistic way to portray that. You know, it's not like, oh, I meet somebody in the first day or two. I meet them. Oh, I figured out this awful secret about them. You know, you'd have a relationship, and especially with something that,
especially with someone as naive as Oscar.
Yeah, well, she's a very private person. You know, she doesn't have to give away the secret, and you know, she's like, I want to get this friendship.
Yeah, and he's very respecting of her privacy. You know, he doesn't pry too much. He doesn't ask a lot of questions,
and that's exactly how, especially if you're becoming friends with somebody, that's how it would happen. Is, you know, if you have someone that's very private that you do not want to discuss with them, the person who's going to be your friend for a long time is the person who's going to understand that you don't want to talk about that. And that's why I think that they grow really close really fast, is because she's like, oh, well, you know, he's not looking at me like I'm some sort of freak.
Yeah.
You know, he
doesn't invade her privacy. I think maybe the most intrusive move he makes on her is when he asks her to go steady. And even then she asks, well, does that mean anything would change between us? And he says, I don't think so. And so she says, okay.
Yeah, that's a huge moment in that movie. And I think we should just kind of get into their relationship and sort of the things associated, because a big part of this movie, other than there's two basic plot lines or two basic ways you can think about what's happening in this movie. So you could think about it as there's the whole like having to protect Ely's safety and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. Like she needs to make sure that she's okay every day, and Oscar's standing up for himself and getting involved with that, right?
Yeah.
So trying to get stronger and trying to not only stand up for himself, but trying to see like kind of combine that with Ely in his life.
He's trying to be a bigger figure for her, and
exactly, and he's trying to like
he's very inspired by her.
Exactly, and he gets the confidence from her, and that's like the main kind of
the dynamic of their relationship.
That's the thing that'll probably keep you interested. It's like that's what actually is the forward moving plot, is the safety, the trying to solve the murders and everything that's happening. And
that's what I think actually really makes this work as such a good horror film, is that it's a romance driven horror film, which is not something that's done very often.
But then, of course, the other main thing is their relationship.
Yeah.
And that's, like, the main one. Of course, there's a smaller subplots. There's, like, her assistant guy and everything like that. And
or Oscar and his dad, or Oscar and his mom.
Yeah, or the guys who are friends trying to solve the crime or whatever.
Yeah.
But their relationship is really, like, what most people will remember about this movie, because it is portrayed in a very, very unique way. Yes. One that you hardly ever or has ever been seen in a movie.
Well, and this is why this is one of my favorite movies, not just one of my favorite horror movies, is that I feel like it asks just as many questions as Blade Runner does about humanity, about love, about society, acceptance. And not very many movies do that at all, and not many horror films do that at all.
Yeah, I think... You know, it's funny. I think that this is probably one of the best couples in a movie that I've ever seen, because
I agree.
Because it's like they're not necessarily, they don't flat out say that these people are perfect for each other, right?
Yeah.
Because, you know, some movies would be like, oh, you're the one I've been waiting for, or whatever. You know?
In a lot of ways, Ely inspires Oscar, or Oscar inspires Ely in reverse. But in some aspects, they're also detrimental to each other's character. They contribute to each other's downfalls and some negative character flaws that may come up throughout the film.
Yeah, I think that's really true.
Which is very realistic of a lot of relationships.
Yeah. I just like the fact that, and we're going to talk about the whole sexuality thing now.
Yeah.
So a lot of people, especially in America, we have this really weird idea about a lot of things in this movie. And, I mean, we don't necessarily, but a lot of people have criticized it for...
Us personally.
Yeah, exactly. There we go. That's who we would put it. A lot of people have problems with the way that it's like, oh, they're 12-year-olds and it's showing a love story or anything like that. And it's really weird, because while they are, you know, he's obsessed with serial killers and doesn't care about really hurting people if they've wronged him.
Yeah, and he doesn't, although he's romantically interested in her, he doesn't seem overtly sexually interested in her.
Yeah. He doesn't seem sexually interested in her at all.
Yeah.
And Ely, this is a spoiler too, Ely was a boy.
Yeah.
And has been castrated and is now just portraying himself as a girl.
Yeah.
You know, so there's this definitely like question of sexual identity in this, you know. I think one of the things that I think I looked it up is like, why would he be portraying himself as a girl at this point?
Yeah.
And it would be to be less suspicious and be able to attack people easier and things like that. Like it's kind of like
it's more easy to lure someone as a girl
be a predator as a little girl.
And you see that in the wild, like most predators are females a lot of the time.
Yeah. And so they grow really close, and as Rob was saying, they have this moment where they're kind of like cuddling in bed, and you know she's naked and everything.
Yeah,
and
so there's some implied sexuality there, but not overt sexuality, because nothing happens.
Yeah, they're not touching each other, they're not kissing or anything. It's just like they're just together. You know? And it's like he's like, oh well, can we go steady? You know, you want to be my girlfriend? He's like, I'm not a girl.
Yeah.
And he's like, okay, I don't care.
He's like, do you want to go steady?
Do you want to go steady? You know?
And she's like, well, would it matter if I wasn't a girl? And he's like, no.
But that's a great thing, and Ely keeps saying that, you know, like, I'm not a girl, you know, and he's just like, I don't care, you know, like I just want to be with you. You make me happy, you know. I feel like we are good together, and there is so much to be said for that.
No, okay, and this is why I love this movie, okay, a big movie, let's say a few years ago, was, Her with Joaquin Phoenix, which kind of tries to address some of the similar issues about,
identity
and love and what it means to be in love, and can you love something that is not the same as you, or...
Mm-hmm.
But I think this movie just such a better job of doing that.
Yeah. It's a much more realistic take on this sort of subject.
It's very relevant today, especially with all the LGBT studies that are going on, and gender acceptance and things that are coming into the mainstream right now.
You know how in a lot of movies or a lot of things it's always portrayed as like, oh, they did something that benefited them that made them love them, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, you bought roses for me or something, or he beat up somebody for me. This movie, they don't really become part of one of them, like help each other until
the relationship
necessary.
Develops. Really,
they don't do it like it's not just like, oh, I have this issue, I'm dealing with it right now.
Yeah.
Oh, this is happening. Like, okay, she's like, you need to stand up for yourself. You gotta do this. Like, she can murder all these people.
Yeah, she could have easily stepped in at any time and stopped what was happening to Oscar, but she lets him deal with it on his own.
She tries to let him grow and handle it himself to try and make him feel better about it. And
similarly, he doesn't push her to be open about her past or
anything like that. And so the other thing I wanted to talk about was it's very realistic, especially when you're starting to be in a relationship, is you kind of test their commitment to see if they're actually what you think they are. And the biggest...
we're going to talk about the door scene?
The door scene.
Yeah.
So he says, like, because she's a vampire, she has to be invited in. And he's like, I'm not going to invite you in. He's like, why can't you come in? Like, was there some force field? And so she
walks in.
She walks in, and so she's suffering. And
she shows him what happens when...
Yeah. She starts bleeding. It's extremely painful.
It looks like she's gonna explode.
Yeah, and so he's like, "Oh no! He's like, oh my gosh! Like, you can come in," and like hugs her and is really sorry about it. And
that's the first time we also see Oscar really start to develop like an ego at that point.
Yeah,
it's right after that scene. That's when he feels that he can really trust her. She's really opened up to him.
Yeah,
and so we see who Oscar really is at that point.
She voluntarily has suffered for him.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to him because it seems like probably nobody ever has.
Yeah.
Like nobody seems to want him around. Nobody seems to really care.
Mom
if he's
doesn't
there.
seem to put much interest into him. Neither does his father.
Yeah, and she's like, I will do this for you because you want. She doesn't get to say it. Like all she does is walk in, and then the scene happens, and that is so ridiculously realistic to a real relationship in which you probably will have your moments where it's tested in that like either you're tested or you kind of put somebody else through that thing of like do you
figure out whether or not that person's gonna be there or not,
and not necessarily that you do it voluntarily, but
no, it just happens.
It's like, oh, I got into some accident, and it's like, is this person still gonna be there for me or something like that, even if it's a hassle for them to be there, if they're not, then it's like, okay, that's not it. But then, I just think that's really realistic, and I
agree.
It's such a small scene, it's a quick scene in terms of how slow this movie moves. A lot of time.
It's not a long movie. It's like 2 hours,
at least 2 hours,
something like that.
I think it's like 2 hours,
maybe just about around 2 hours.
I think so.
It feels like it's a lot longer than.
This movie is slow.
It feels like it's a good 3 hours.
Yeah, it's very slow. That's just because they linger on shots. They let the scenes play out. They let the actors play it out.
Well, and that's what I think makes this movie good. Is I think a lot of American films, we edit so much. We move from shot to shot, scene to scene very quickly. We're all about moving the plot forward. Mm-hmm. And this movie spends so much time in every scene that we really get as much as we can out of every little bit of script, every bit of interaction between characters, every mannerism.
Yeah.
Everything feels very deliberate about this movie.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. There's just not a lot of fat. There's not like everything just kind of adds to the characters, and I gotta say that for being kid actors, they
are damn good.
They are freaking amazing. I mean, man, with the eyes and everything, they feel very real, and you get lost in this movie when you're watching it.
You do. You forget that they're 12. Like
it's weird.
You're in your 20s. You're watching some 12-year-old kids have a romance and you almost relate to it in a weird way.
That is so weird. I don't know how I feel about that comment, but yeah. Yeah, it's true though. It's a very unique story, but it's very relatable in the way that it's done.
Yeah.
And that's pretty amazing. So I think, because we could talk about this forever.
We could talk about this endlessly.
I think we should just hit on
a few other key points.
I think one, cinematography.
Oh my god, I was just going to say that.
Yep.
Cinematography is amazing.
So the way that this movie is color treated, the way this movie is shot, the way the lenses and everything, I mean, it's...
Every camera angle, every use of the color palette is just so deliberate. It works for every scene.
Mm-hmm.
Not every scene is color graded exactly the same.
No.
I mean, there's a theme for the movie as far as color goes.
Yeah, it's just kind of desaturated and any kind of...
Kind of a bluey hint.
Yeah.
But there are specific scenes that are colored differently for different reasons. And there are angles that are used for specific reasons. And I think that this movie does cinematography so well.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And one thing I really like about this movie is the way the blood is.
Oh, yeah.
It's like a dark, kind of like...
It's a very realistic blood.
Yeah, black, kind of red. Like, they kind of make it seem...
It's very goth blood.
Yeah, very, very goth. It's not like the Hammer horror blood, where it's like super red, or like a lot of movies where it's just like fountains of...
It's not the Evil Dead.
Yeah. I think the way the blood, it makes it a lot more realistic. And yeah, they just do that in a good way. I think that's super important for, depending on what kind of horror movie you're gonna make, to do the blood. Like, I seriously think that can make like all the difference.
No, I agree, because, well, I mean, some of the best posters for this movie involve blood, and I think it's because they did it so well.
Yeah. You can pretty much take any scene from this movie and blow it up into like a piece of art.
Yeah.
It is freaking crazy. And as far as the music, I don't really even remember there being much throughout the whole thing.
And that's where some of the hints towards what the time frame is when you hear music for the first time. It's very 80s music, and I didn't even know that it was set in the 80s initially. It wasn't until like I rewatched it and I heard that song and I looked it up. It was like, oh yeah, that makes some things make more sense. I'm like, that's why they're driving a late 80s Volvo.
Volvo.
Swedish cars.
So good. But we could talk about this movie forever. Probably will continue talking about it for a while, but
we'll probably compare other movies to it at certain points. And
yeah, any horror movie, right? Or anything that's not typical one.
Yep.
So that's all I'd say about Let the Right One In. Anything else you want to cover for it?
All I have to say is, honestly, go see it. It's on Netflix. Pretty much everybody has a Netflix account at this point.
Yeah.
It's worth watching. There are some things I can tell are mistranslated, but I can tell that the script is well written.
Yeah.
And, I know that's because it's adapted from a book.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a great movie, so take the opportunity to go see it.
Yeah. This was a very passionate episode.
It was. I think this is the first time you and I have agreed so much in any episode.
Man, Blade Runner, The Crow, and Let the Right One In. I do not agree on that. But they're all amazing. But yeah, just wait till we choose a movie that we don't like.
Yeah, I know.
So we hope you've enjoyed this. We'll probably be doing a few more movie ones in the future.
Yeah.
So we'll choose ones that hopefully people will like too.
Yeah.
But I'm Dr. Sanders.
This is Robbie Gore.
And thanks for joining us.